My dad showed up asking for a place to stay, and my wife said, let's help him out. Sweet, right? Fast forward a few months, and I'm working 2 jobs while they're cozying up on my asterisk couch, plotting something I can't even wrap my head around. What I found out later, let's just say it made betrayal look like a family tradition. But let me start from the beginning. Let me set the scene for you. I'm Jason, 28 years old, just your average overworked guy who thought he had it all figured out. My wife, Emily, 25, was the love of my life, or so I thought. She had this smile that could light up a room, and I worked 2 grueling jobs to keep that smile intact. Bills, groceries, date nights. Yeah, all me. And then there's my dad, Robert, 55. He showed up out of nowhere a few months ago saying he needed a place to crash. Sure, he's family, so I didn't think twice about letting him stay. Big mistake. Huge. You know how people say, if it seems too good to be true, it probably is? Well, my life was Exhibit A. Emily played the perfect wife, supportive, affectionate, always making sure I had a hot meal waiting when I got home. Robert acted like the cool old man, full of wisdom that no one asked for. He had this knack for turning every casual conversation into a life lesson no one wanted. It was annoying, but harmless. Or so I thought. The first crack in the picture-perfect facade appeared out of nowhere. One night I walked into the living room after my late shift. Emily and Robert were sitting on the couch, laughing at something on her phone. Nothing weird about that, right? Except the way Emily was laughing. It wasn't her usual polite chuckle. It was that full-on, head-tilted back kind of laugh she used to save for me. Hey, what's so funny? I asked, trying to sound casual. Emily quickly put her phone down. Oh, just a dumb meme Robert showed me, she said a little too quickly. Robert gave me one of his trademark smirks and shrugged, like I was the one being weird. Something felt off, but I brushed it aside. Maybe I was just overtired from pulling double shifts. Or maybe I was already in denial. Things only got stranger from there. Emily started spending more time with Robert when I wasn't around. I'd come home and find them watching TV together or talking in hushed tones in the kitchen. She even started cooking his favorite meals she'd never made for me. I tried to shake off the unease, telling myself I was being paranoid. But then there were the little moments that didn't add up, the way she'd glance at him across the room, or how Robert suddenly started dressing up just to sit at home. Seriously, who puts on cologne to binge-watch old movies? Then came the real kicker. After a long shift at my second job, a coworker, Pete, invited me for drinks. Pete's one of those guys who knows everybody and everything. So when he leaned over his beer and said, Hey, isn't your wife named Emily? My heart skipped a beat. Yeah, why? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Pete smirked. Saw her at that fancy Italian place downtown earlier tonight. Looked like she was having a great time with some older guy. At first, I laughed it off. That's probably her dad, I said, though my stomach was doing somersaults. But Pete shook his head. Nah, man, this dude wasn't giving off fatherly vibes, if you know what I mean. I felt like someone had poured a bucket of ice water over me. Pete must have seen the look on my face because he quickly added, Hey, I'm probably wrong. Could have been anyone, right? But it was too late. The seed of doubt had been planted, and no amount of convincing myself otherwise could make it go away. That night, lying in bed next to Emily, I couldn't sleep. Every little thing she did, every text, every laugh, every excuse, started replaying in my head. I stared at the ceiling, wondering if I was losing my mind or if my perfect life was about to implode. All right, here's where things started getting seriously weird. You know that gut feeling you get when something's off, but you can't quite put your finger on it? Yeah, I was living in that zone, like permanently. Emily's behavior around my dad, Robert, was different. Not, oh, he's family, so we're close different. More like too close for comfort. Her laugh around him? Way too loud and way too frequent. I mean, I'm funny. I know I'm funny. But she wasn't cracking up like that at my jokes anymore. And Robert? This man had no reason to be walking around the house looking like he just got out of a GQ photo shoot. Button-up shirts, pressed pants, and that obnoxiously strong cologne that could probably knock out a small animal. For what? To sit on the couch and watch daytime TV? Yeah, okay, sure. I tried to shake it off. I told myself I was just being dramatic. Maybe they're bonding because they're both bored while I'm out working all the time, I thought. But then things got really suspicious. One night, I got home earlier than usual from my second job. Normally, Emily would be excited to see me, maybe even offer to heat up some leftovers. But when I walked in, she was in the kitchen, whispering something to Robert. The moment they saw me, they froze like kids caught sneaking cookies. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. "Oh, nothing. Just talking about dinner plans for tomorrow," Emily said, her voice a little too cheerful. Robert gave me a casual nod, but I didn't miss the way he shifted on his feet, like he couldn't wait to get out of there. Something was definitely up. And then came the text. It was late, probably around midnight, and I was scrolling through my phone while Emily slept next to me. My phone buzzed with a notification, and I saw her name pop up. That was odd. Why would she be texting me while she's right here? Curiosity got the better of me, so I opened it. "Can't wait for tomorrow. Meet me after Jason leaves." For a second, I thought I was imagining things. I reread it 3 times, hoping the words would magically rearrange themselves into something normal. They didn't. My first thought? This had to be a mistake. Maybe she meant to text her friend about some surprise she was planning for me. But the more I stared at that text, the more it felt like the walls of my world were closing in. I looked over at Emily, peacefully asleep, completely unaware that she had just flipped my entire reality upside down. My brain was racing. What do? Do I wake her up and demand an explanation? Do I storm into Robert's room and confront him right now? But then I realized something. I didn't have any solid proof. All I had was one suspicious text. If I exploded now, they'd just deny everything, and I'd look like the crazy one. So, I did the hardest thing I've ever done. I deleted the text and played the dumb. But let me tell you, pretending like everything was fine while knowing what I knew, that's a whole different level of torture. All right, this is where I officially stopped playing the clueless husband and stepped into full-on detective mode. Call it paranoia or survival instincts. But I had to know what was going on. The text, the weird behavior, the secret little moments between my wife and my dad. It all screamed one thing. Something shady was happening under my roof, and I wasn't about to just sit around and let it slide. Step 1. Tweak my work schedule. I told Emily I'd picked up some overtime, but in reality I was cutting my hours short to keep an eye on things. Step 2. Install a camera. Yeah, I know how it sounds. Borderline spy behavior. But desperate times, right? I hid a small camera in the living room angled perfectly to catch their little chats. Setting it up felt like something out of a low-budget spy movie. I was half expecting Emily or Robert to walk in mid-installation and catch me red-handed, but I got it done without a hitch. Step 3, execute the plan. The next morning, I pulled off the most convincing fake exit of my life. I grabbed my bag, kissed Emily on the cheek, and said, "See you tonight. Don't miss me too much." She laughed, but it felt off, like she was laughing at me, not with me. Once I was sure she thought I was gone, I parked a few blocks away and doubled back to the house on foot. Heart pounding, palms sweaty, I felt like a kid sneaking back home after curfew. When I got close enough, I peeked through the window, and there they were, Robert and Emily, cozy on the couch like they didn't have a care in the world. I slipped around to the back door, which I'd conveniently left unlocked earlier, and quietly let myself in. I stayed hidden in the hallway, just out of sight, but close enough to hear everything. "Jason's working himself to the bone," Robert said, chuckling. Emily sighed dramatically, like she was carrying the weight of the world. "I know, but it's all going to be worth it soon, right?" That's when I noticed what Emily was holding. A piece of paper. Not just any piece of paper. My bank statement. "Don't worry, sweetheart," Robert said, his voice dripping with smugness. "We'll be sitting pretty soon enough. Just a little more patience." I swear my heart stopped for a second. What the hell does that mean? Sitting pretty on what? I didn't need to hear more. I quietly slipped out of the house and sat in my car for what felt like an eternity, replaying their words over and over in my head. They were plotting something, and whatever it was, it involved my money. This wasn't just some sketchy family drama anymore. This was betrayal on a whole new level. I didn't know exactly what they were planning, but one thing was clear: I wasn't going to let it happen. By the time I finally sat down to review the camera footage, my nerves were shot. A week of sneaking around, faking smiles, and pretending like everything was fine had me feeling like a walking pressure cooker. But I needed answers, real, undeniable proof of what was going on. What I found, though, no amount of prep could have braced me for that. It was late at night in the footage. Emily and Robert were in the living room, each holding a glass of wine. The whole scene looked so casual, it made my stomach turn. There they were, sitting on my couch, in my house, drinking wine that I probably paid for, acting like they didn't have a care in the world. At first, their conversation seemed harmless, just small talk. Work, the weather, whatever. But then Emily leaned in, her voice dropping into that soft, almost flirty tone I hadn't heard in months. "You're the reason I stay, Robert," she said, giggling, like some schoolgirl with a crush. My heart was already racing, but then Robert responded, "Jason doesn't have a clue." He smirked, this smug, self-satisfied smirk that made me want to punch through the screen. Emily sipped her wine and smiled. "He doesn't need to know, babe." Babe. That word felt like a sucker punch to the gut. Before I could even process it, Robert leaned in closer. And then, boom. It happened. My dad kissed my wife. The glass of water I was holding slipped out of my hand, shattering on the floor. But I didn't move. I couldn't. My eyes were glued to the screen, watching as the two people I trusted most in the world tore my life apart in real time. I felt like a puppet whose strings had been yanked out. Everything I thought I knew about my marriage, about my family, it was all a lie. The betrayal wasn't just personal, it was cosmic, like the universe itself was laughing at me. And here's the thing. I wanted to storm downstairs, confront them, and end it all right there. My blood was boiling, my hands were shaking, and my mind was screaming, "Do something!" But then, a different thought crept in. A colder, sharper thought. No, not yet. If I lashed out now, they'd just lie. They'd twist the narrative, make excuses, maybe even turn it around on me. I couldn't let that happen. No, I needed a plan. Something bigger, something that would make sure neither of them could walk away unscathed. So I sat there in the silence of my room, staring at the paused footage, and made a promise to myself. They thought they were pulling the strings, but they were about to find out what happens when the puppet cuts itself loose. All right. By this point, I wasn't just angry. I was laser-focused. You know that calm before the storm vibe? Yeah, that was me. I spent the next week putting together everything I needed to make sure Robert and Emily couldn't worm their way out of this. If they wanted to play dirty, I was ready to outplay them at their own game. Step 1. Follow the money. I pulled up every bank statement I could find and started noticing some interesting transactions, weird withdrawals, charges I didn't recognize. It was like watching a horror movie, except the villain was draining my account. And get this, while I was out busting my back working 2 jobs, they were busy opening a joint bank account with my money. Yeah, let that sink in. Step 2, record everything. I started keeping my phone on me at all times, ready to hit record whenever I overheard their little private chats. Emily would drop hints about big plans, and Robert kept talking about how it'll all pay off soon. The audacity through the roof. Step 3, lawyer up. I wasn't about to let them just walk away from this. I reached out to a lawyer and laid everything out. Every shady transaction, every recorded conversation, and even that cursed camera footage. The lawyer's response? "You've got a solid case, Jason." Music to my ears. The final straw came one afternoon when I logged into my bank account and saw their joint account info pop up. Seeing their names side by side on an account that they funded with my hard-earned money? That was it. No more waiting. No more pretending. It was time to blow this whole thing wide open. Dinner that night was a quiet affair, at least until I decided to drop the hammer. "So," I said casually, swirling my fork in my spaghetti, "how long have you two been stealing from me?" The fork clattered out of Emily's hand, and Robert's smug expression froze. Perfect. I leaned back in my chair, keeping my voice steady. "Or should I ask how long you've been sleeping together?" The silence that followed was almost deafening. Emily opened her mouth, but all that came out was a pathetic stammer. "What are you talking about?" Robert, ever the smooth talker, tried to play it cool. "Jason, come on. That's ridiculous. You're imagining things." I smirked. "Oh, I'm imagining things. Great. Then maybe you can explain this." I slapped the stack of bank statements and printed account info on the table. "And while you're at it, maybe explain why your name is on this account with her." Emily's face went pale, and Robert looked like a deer caught in headlights. They didn't even bother trying to deny it. The evidence was too damning. "You've been lying to me, stealing from me, using me," I said, my voice rising. "Do you have any idea how stupid you both look right now?" Robert tried to speak, but I cut him off. "Don't even bother. I've got everything, texts, recordings, bank records. You're done." They sat there, speechless, as I got up from the table and walked out. The satisfaction of watching their little empire crumble? Priceless. If there's one thing I've learned from this whole mess, it's that sometimes you have to burn the bridge, and maybe even the road leading to it. After confronting Emily and Robert, I didn't just want them out of my house. I wanted them out of my life, permanently. The plan was simple, but oh so satisfying. First, I called my lawyer to confirm I could legally evict them, considering all the evidence I'd gathered. The verdict? "You're completely within your rights." That was all I needed to hear. While they were out, probably plotting their next move, I got to work. Locks? Changed. Their stuff? Packed neatly into trash bags and left on the porch. And no, I didn't spare a single ounce of effort. Clothes? Dumped in bags. Emily's overpriced skincare products? Tossed in a box. My dad's weird collection of old records? Right there next to them. By the time I was done, the porch looked like a yard sale no one wanted to shop at. When Robert and Emily pulled up later that evening, the look on their faces was chef's kiss. Emily froze, staring at her bags like she couldn't believe what was happening. Robert, on the other hand, looked like he was ready to argue. "What the hell is this?" Robert demanded, his voice already rising. I leaned casually against the doorframe, arms crossed. "This," I said, gesturing to their belongings, "is me taking out the trash. You're welcome." Emily stepped forward, tears already welling up in her eyes. "Jason, please, let's just talk about this. It was a mistake. I didn't mean for things to get this far." I raised an eyebrow. A mistake? Opening a joint account with my money wasn't a mistake. Sneaking around behind my back wasn't a mistake. You knew exactly what you were doing. "But I love you," she cried, her voice cracking. I let out a dry laugh. "You've got a funny way of showing it." Then Robert chimed in, trying to play the victim like he wasn't the mastermind behind this whole mess. "Jason, I'm still your father. This isn't how family treats each other." That was it. The last straw. "You're a pathetic excuse for a father," I spat, my voice shaking with anger. "What kind of dad steals from his own son? You didn't just betray me. You went out of your way to destroy my life." Robert started to say something, but I wasn't done. I turned to Emily, my glare sharp enough to cut glass. "And you," I said, my voice low but firm, "are nothing more than a gold-digging cheat. You used me, lied to me, and now you want to act like the victim? Save it." By now, the neighbors had started peeking out their windows, watching the whole scene like it was their favorite reality show. Emily noticed, too, her cheeks turning red as she tried to cover her face. "Jason, please," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "You're humiliating us." I stepped closer, lowering my voice just enough so only they could hear. "You humiliated yourselves the moment you thought you could get away with this." And with that, I stepped back inside and slammed the door, leaving them to collect their things under the judgmental stares of the neighborhood. I watched from the window as they scrambled to load their stuff into Robert's beat-up car. Emily was crying. Robert looked furious. But you know what? I didn't feel bad. Not even a little. They deserved every ounce of humiliation coming their way. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe again. My house, my life, it was mine again. And I wasn't about to let anyone take that from me ever again. You know that saying, what goes around comes around. Well, Robert and Emily were about to learn exactly what that means. Once the dust settled and I started putting my life back together, karma rolled in like a wrecking ball, and I won't lie, watching it play out was the cherry on top. First, let's talk about Emily. After I kicked her out, she tried her luck with some of her so-called friends. The problem? Word travels fast in a neighborhood like ours. Apparently, betraying your husband with his dad isn't a great look. Who knew, right? One by one, her friends shut their doors in her face. The ones who didn't outright block her calls made excuses like, "Sorry, I just don't want to get involved." Translation, "We're judging you, but politely." Eventually, she ended up crashing in a motel until her savings ran dry. I heard through the grapevine that she picked up a job at a diner across town. Imagine going from a life of free rent and luxury to flipping burgers and cleaning ketchup stains. Poetic justice, if you ask me. Now, Robert. Oh, Robert. He thought he could slink back into his old life like nothing happened. But remember how I said word spreads fast? Turns out it spreads even faster when you've got colleagues at the local golf club who thrive on gossip. By the end of the week, everyone knew what he'd done, not just to me, but to his own family. Suddenly, his golf buddies stopped inviting him to tea times. The guy he always sat with at the clubhouse started forgetting to save him a seat. Even the bartender gave him the cold shoulder. Robert went from being the wise, charming older guy to that backstabbing creep no one wants to be around. Eventually, he packed up and left town, probably hoping to outrun his reputation. Spoiler alert, reputations have a funny way of sticking around. As for me, I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. Therapy became my lifeline, helping me process all the betrayal and anger without letting it consume me. My therapist, a no-nonsense woman named Linda, didn't pull any punches. "You've been through hell," she said during one session, "but you're still standing. That says a lot about your strength, Jason." She wasn't wrong. For the first time in years, I felt free, like I was finally living life on my terms. Work became my safe haven. Without Emily or Robert dragging me down, I had more time and energy to focus on my career. My boss noticed the change almost immediately. "Jason, I don't know what's changed, but keep it up," he said during a meeting. 2 months later, I got a promotion and a fat pay raise to go with it. I also started reconnecting with old friends, people I'd lost touch with while juggling my toxic home life. It felt good to be surrounded by people who actually cared about me, not what they could get from me. Looking back, it's almost funny how everything worked out. Emily and Robert thought they were running the show, but in the end, they only destroyed themselves. And me? I came out stronger, smarter, and more determined than ever. The moral of the story? Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, it's getting better. A few months after the chaos had finally died down, life was good. No, scratch that. Life was great. I'd finally settled into a routine that didn't involve stress eating in my car or wondering what fresh betrayal was waiting for me at home. My promotion was keeping me busy, therapy was grounding me, and for the first time in forever, I felt like I was in control. Then, one random Tuesday, a letter showed up in my mailbox. No return address, but the handwriting on the front? Oh, I'd recognize Emily's loopy cursive anywhere. I stood there, letter in hand, debating what to do. Part of me wanted to rip it open just to see what excuse she'd come up with. But the other part, that part was screaming, why give her even a second more of your time? Curiosity won out, at least for the first line. "Dear Jason, I know I messed up, and I hope you can one day find it in your heart to..." Nope. That was all I needed to read. Same old Emily, always the victim, always trying to weasel her way back in. I walked straight to my backyard fire pit, grabbed a lighter, and set the letter on fire. Watching the flames consume it was oddly satisfying, like officially closing a chapter I never wanted to revisit. When the ashes finally scattered into the breeze, I couldn't help but smile. Later that week, during a therapy session, I brought up the letter. Burning it felt good, I told Linda, my therapist. She tilted her head, giving me that knowing smile she always did when I had a breakthrough coming. And why do you think that is? I thought about it for a second. Because I didn't deserve what they did to me, I said, but they got exactly what they deserved. Linda nodded. Sounds like closure to me. And you know what? She was right. For the first time in years, I wasn't carrying the weight of someone else's choices. I wasn't looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next betrayal. I was just free. Emily and Robert thought they could tear me down, but all they really did was force me to rebuild. And this time, I built stronger. Justice wasn't just about watching them fall. It was about rising higher than they ever thought I could. And let me tell you, that kind of peace, that's the best kind of revenge.